Today we're going to be talking about any additional required configuration in order to get your HUD up and running. It may be you've done these things already, but if you haven't done these things, your HUD's not going to work. So if you've reached this stage, you've done everything in videos 1 to 3, your HUD's still not working, you're probably missing one of the following steps. First step is we need to make sure auto import is set up. You might find that your HUD works, but there are no hands being recorded on the players at your table. This is because you haven't set up auto import. Now there's two steps to this. Number one, you have to go into your poker client and ensure that your poker client is saving your hand histories to a certain folder. With some clients this is on by default. In other poker clients you'll have to go into the settings, you'll have to turn on hand history saving, and you'll have to choose a location where you want your hand histories to be saved. Once you've done that, the next step is to tell Hand2Note where to look to find those hand histories. We go to the Auto Import tab in the Configuration options. We can choose to add a new Auto Import folder. We click on Add Folder, we navigate to the directory where our hand histories are saved. We then choose Select Folder. We'll then see the new hand history directory path represented here in Hand2Note, and that stage of the configuration is now complete. If you already have hands on players in your database, don't expect their stats to show up on the HUD panel automatically. It's necessary first to process those hands to update the new stats you've imported into your config folder. We can do that by going to the main Hand2Note window, choosing Clear Stats. Choose the option Yes. Are you sure you want to clear stats in database? Once you've done that, choose the Build Stats option, and depending on the size of your database, you'll have to wait for a period of time. So if you're finding that you have, let's say, a ton of hands on someone in your database, but when their HUD panel loads at the table, there's no stats on that HUD panel, there's a very good chance that you haven't processed the information in your existing database. It won't do it automatically. You have to come to this main window, clear stats, then rebuild everything from scratch. If you don't currently have any data in your database, then you don't need to worry about this step. The stats will develop organically as the sample size in your database increases. Next, we want to go to Rooms. Firstly, we want to input our username if requested, depending on the room we're playing at. Notice there's a whole list of rooms here. We just choose the room we're playing at and essentially read the information associated with the room we're playing on. So firstly, make sure you type your nickname into the box. Then note that for many poker clients, some additional software is required in order for the HUD to be up and running. So let's take something like PokerStars. Hand2Note will not connect directly to PokerStars. It's necessary to have some third-party software running in the background. Now there are a few different options for this. Hand2Note lists the options. You can use Stars Helper, Session Lord, Stars Caption, Table Optimizer. Any of them will do the job. You don't necessarily even have to use the features of these individual programs, although some of them have some useful features. We just need them running in the background so that Hand2Note can integrate with PokerStars or whichever poker client you're using. For PokerStars, I've been using Stars Caption. Seems pretty decent, but so are some of the other pieces of software here as well. You could try any one that interests you. So whichever your room, select your room from the tabs here on the left-hand side. Follow the instructions regarding any additional tools that are required in order to integrate your poker client with Hand2Note. Notice that a lot of these softwares are not free. You'll have to purchase a separate license to be using this third-party integration software. Usually not too expensive, however. For example, something like Stars Caption, I think it's $25 for the entire year. So it is an additional cost you'll have to pay to get the HUD up and running, but it's usually not going to be too expensive depending on which software you choose. Okay, that's all of the mandatory configuration out of the way. If you've followed everything so far, including the information in the previous tutorials, your HUD should be up and running. However, make sure you run everything as administrator. So when you open this software, rather than just double click on the icon on your desktop, for example, you want to right click and choose Run as Administrator. You want to do that for Hand2Note. You want to do that for whichever third-party integration software you're using, such as Stars Caption. You want to also do that for your poker client. If one of those three items is not running as administrator, it could prevent the HUD from loading correctly. Finally, if you've done all that and things are still not working, it can't hurt to give your computer a quick reboot, restart your computer, run everything again as administrator and just double check it's definitely not working. Remember as well, when you fire up your table on your poker client, the HUD's not going to appear instantly. It's going to appear after you've played a couple of hands usually, so don't worry if it's not there immediately. That doesn't necessarily mean that something is incorrect with the setup. You've got to give it a little bit of time to load up first. Now if you've done all of that and things are still not working, then something's probably gone wrong. I recommend you go back through the installation videos again, make sure you've checked every single step. If you do that and the HUD's still not working, then you can contact me. But that should not be the majority of cases. This should be a 1% exception. If the problem that you are facing is something that was clearly explained in the tutorial, then I won't be especially happy to help you, given that I've already provided these tutorials for you. The point is not to scare you away from asking for help. I'm here to provide support if you have any issues with your HUD. However, if I have 200 guys messaging me, asking me why their HUD doesn't work when they haven't followed the basic auto import steps, for example, then that's just additional time that I can't spend improving the Death Star HUD. Now, although we've covered everything to get your HUD up and running, it still might not be configured in the most optimal way. So in the next part of the installation tutorial series, we're going to be talking about any additional tweaks you might want to make in the configuration options in order to get your HUD up and running as smoothly as possible.